Welcome to the Total Soccer Show Weekend Review. Liverpool are inching closer to their title-winning endeavour, while another loss for Man United marked their worst Premier League season ever. Arsenal dropped points, but they shouldn't be too sad. After all, they could be Tottenham, who are just plain bad. In Germany, their Klassiker ended with the point split, but Bayern stayed ahead because Leverkusen were a bit disappointing. In Italy, the Rome derby was kind of mediocre, while Weston McKennie got in trouble playing poker. And in Spain, Barcelona's lead wasn't upended, while Kylian Mbappe put in a reducer that'll get him suspended. And in MLS, Vancouver are the cream of the Western Conference crop, while in the East, for several glorious hours, Charlotte FC were top. My name's Ryan Bailey. Joining me today, it's a power trio. Hello, Joseph Lowry. How are you?
Ryan, I need a minute-by-minute breakdown of you enjoying those few hours because I actually didn't realize that Charlotte were top for that long. Were you just like going out there and kissing babies? Were you signing autographs? Were you and Sir Minty getting a beer? How did you spend those 2 hours?
Full disclosure, I didn't realise until I looked at the table on Sunday that we were top for a few hours, but immediately took my shirt off, ran down the street, throwing it around my head like a lasso.
We've done it. Everyone, we've done it. Why am I the only one in the streets? Just me? Okay.
I went and knocked on all my neighbours' doors. Did you hear the news? And
Declan Rice, Callum Wilson, we're top.
Wrong neighbourhood. Close enough. Graham Rothman, hello.
Hello, Ryan Bailey. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Good. It's been a good weekend in the soccer world. Or has it? Let's get to that very soon. But lots of derbies to talk about in this here weekend review. And hopefully, Graham, minimal golf chat. I know you've been very into the Georgian golf from the weekend.
Yeah, I mean, if we were doing a Masters review today, I would almost certainly have more to say than I do about the soccer weekend review. That's maybe a tease of my general thoughts of the European title races in the Big Five leagues. Things seem to have got a little bit low energy over the last few weeks. But yes, I enjoyed the golf a lot. Maybe we'll talk a little bit about that on the Patreon.
So I edited our last Patreon episode, the curling one that we did, and I put in the description like something to the effect of, does Graham have endless sporting, like secret sporting knowledge? Because Graham strolled into that episode as the only one of us that knew anything about curling and seemed to know quite a lot about curling. Graham, you've got golf on your radar. You've got tennis on your radar, of course, as we saw in that other Patreon video. And as Taylor and I know, far too intimately at this point. You've got soccer on your radar. You've got a little bit of basketball on your radar. You are a machine, my friend.
If Scotland either invented a sport or are good at a sport, you have no choice. So curling, we're good at it. Golf, we invented it. Soccer, I don't actually know. We invented soccer, of course, famously.
You're good at it.
Well, no, something went wrong there. Neither are England, to be fair. But yeah, that's the rules. That's the law of the land.
Okay, very good. I look forward to your pickleball knowledge soon. What's next for you?
Is pickleball the same as padel or paddle?
No, they're totally different.
They're quite different. Okay. One's easier than the other.
Pickleball. Which is easier? Pickleball's easier.
Yeah. It was pickleball caught on with elder generations first, and has then trickled down to younger generations. So mechanically, there's a lower barrier to entry for pickleball for sure.
Right, because my gym has built a couple of paddle, however you say that. Never before has a person been tripped up by such a simple word to say phonetically. But there's a couple of paddle courts at my gym, so maybe I'll give that a go.
Wow. I can imagine if you were swimming and you were in trouble, your coach would be like, just paddle, Graham. What?
See, I think I want to give it. It sounds like it needs a little bit of a European flair. The Spaniards love it, don't they? And the Italians. So I think that's what I'm trying to do there.
I had many padel courts in my neighbourhood when I was living in Rome. And more about Rome coming later in this episode. But not before I tell you all about patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. The best way to support this here endeavour. There's bonus episodes, bonus videos, and access to our Discord server where all the cool kids are hanging out, including, but not limited to Mr. Taylor Rockwell, who's not joining us on this weekend review, but he's here in spirit, of course, and you can chat with him and us on the Discord, patreon.com/Total Soccer. So a please and a thank you. Let's get to it, shall we? We'll start off in the Premier League, where Liverpool had a 2-1 win over West Ham. They're now potentially one win from the Premier League title. They are 13 points clear. 2 wins will guarantee it for them at this point. If Arsenal lose at Ipswich next weekend, the Reds can wrap up the title by beating Leicester next weekend as well. Virgil van Dijk, Graham, was the hero in this one with his 89th minute winner. And Mo Salah with an assist here just a few days after finally signing that contract extension.
Yeah, and we haven't spoken about that contract extension yet. Obviously been a big storyline with Liverpool. Van Dijk as well as obviously out of contract at the end of the season. He's not really... He's not keeping it under wraps very well that he's agreed to a contract extension. There's a big grin on his face after this game when he was asked about it. He's kissing the Liverpool badge when he scores the goal. That, by the way, I think will be remembered as the big moment that delivered the title. I know it's obviously been basically in the bag for Liverpool for a number of weeks now. But I think there's always one moment, right, with a title-winning team, whether it's the Company goal against Leicester City or Van Persie's volley against Villa, and I think Van Dijk's goal will be remembered as that moment for Liverpool. So another step closer to the title for Liverpool. Big news that Salah's staying. He's signed until 2027. I think the biggest consequence of that new contract is it gives them more time to find a long-term replacement for Salah, right? I think it is reasonable to presume that he might not replicate the heroics of this season, where he's had a better season than any other point in his career. He'll be 33, 34 by the time this contract comes to an end. But Liverpool have bought themselves more time. So, big tick there for Liverpool, and a big tick that they are another step closer to the title.
Yeah, and it was fitting to see Mo Salah so involved so early on in this game. Some of Liverpool's earliest dangerous moments came down that right side. Luis Diaz on the left as well. Those two were so bright early on in this match, cutting inside, playing either lofted balls into the box, looking for a runner from the weak side, or just looking for shots on goal. And it is, I think, fitting that the first goal of this game comes from Salah with that perfectly weighted ball on the floor to Diaz, who's cutting into the box from the left wing, and Diaz scores. Both of those guys were fantastic. Even Diaz, I think, shown a little bit brighter than Mo Salah for long stretches of this game. But getting Salah to not just any contract extension, to go back to some of the off-field stuff briefly, I think the 2-year length of this contract extension is almost perfect for Liverpool because, yes, it does allow them more time to go out there and find a replacement. I think we're probably all kidding ourselves that we think they're going to find a true Mo Salah replacement in the fullest sense of that word. But they can go out there and figure out how they eventually want to replace a big chunk, if not all of his production. But even more than that, they didn't commit to Mo Salah for 5 years. They didn't commit to Mo Salah for some absurdly long contract that is going to have them paying him well after he's exited his prime. And I'm willing to concede, even as he turns 33 in June, he might still be in his prime by the end of this deal. I think it's possible in a way for this 2-year deal where you could see Salah not really declining much, because if you go through and look at his tape, you watch what he's done on the field and also look at his numbers, he hasn't really declined. Graham, you just said it. He's enjoying his best season right now. And even if you look at, sort of his average production over the last couple of years, even after he's turned 30, it's incredible production. I could see Mo Salah continuing to produce at something close to, say, last season's level for the next 2 years of his deal. And then hopefully at that point, maybe you've won one more title. Maybe you haven't. But either way, you probably have run your Mo Salah course at that point. You've had another 2 cracks at the Premier League title, at winning some European competitions. I'm not surprised that Liverpool have handled this basically masterfully, at least now that they've got pen to paper. But man, this deal feels just about perfect in every sense of the word.
Very good. Everything going Liverpool this season, apart from the things that haven't gone Liverpool. Graham, West Ham, if we can touch on them for a moment. What is going on with them this season? It seems like it's been a bit of a write-off for a few weeks now. They're winless in the last 5 games. Do we get the sense that Graham Potter isn't quite fitting in with the current players he has?
Well, I think Graham Potter will be relatively pleased with how West Ham played in this specific match. I don't disagree, Ryan. It's been a dreadful season for West Ham, particularly when you look at the talent that they have. I mean, their attack on paper is one of the strongest attacks in the Premier League, and even throughout their squad in midfield and defence, they've got talented players. I mean, one of my worst predictions was that Todibo was going to be one of the signings of the season in the Premier League, and it's been a defensive disaster class for West Ham all the way through the year. I still maintain that he's a good player, so there's something there for West Ham. But you can see they're struggling between the balance between the defence and the midfield and the attack. And I think in the second half of this game against Liverpool, they started to pose more of a threat, right, going in the other direction. They actually started to limit Liverpool as well as an attacking threat, where Liverpool were struggling to get Salah and Luis Diaz into good areas. You can see that in how few final third entries they had in that second half. I think it came down from 32 in the first half to 10. in the second half. And then going in the other direction, West Ham, they started to have more joy in getting their attackers into space. I thought Wan-Bissaka, once he was switched out to the left side, he's one of the few players actually at West Ham who's had a great season, statistically as well. He's right up there for some of his progressive carries. Once they shifted him to the left side, he was really effective at getting forward, and Bowen and Kudus were getting in behind, and Alisson had to make a couple of big saves. And even towards the end of the first half, West Ham were starting to pose a threat as well. They hit the crossbar a couple times. So, Graham Potter called this the best performance since he's been manager. But I think it's similar to a few teams in the Premier League this season, maybe Manchester United being one of them, certainly, where it feels like they're just sort of preparing for next season, and Potter is working out what he has within his squad, and he won't really be judged until the start of next year.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Hopefully he's not judged, because they're in 17th right now. They're above Ipswich by 14 points, so it's unlikely that there'll be any consequence of that. But yeah, not the best season for West Ham. Very good indeed for Liverpool, of course, who, as a reminder, can win it next weekend if results go their way. Tell you who's definitely not going to win it, though, Joe. Manchester City, mathematically eliminated from title contention this weekend despite their win. Man City 5, Crystal Palace 2. Imagine me coming down on Saturday morning to put on the TV and Palace are 2-0 up over Man City already. But then, of course, things turned around. A goal and assist from Kevin De Bruyne, who was peak Kevin De Bruyne, it seemed, in this game. He was incredible. Ederson getting an assist in this one as well. Quite the turnaround, Joe, for Man City.
Ryan, you've got your Toni Kroos theorem with Real Madrid, right, where, if Toni Kroos had a good game, Real Madrid were going to have a good game. I think with Man City, it's if Ederson gets an assist, made up stat or not, City are going to have a good game. I think that's just how it works. I think there is some sort of correlation there. This was, after you scrub the first 20-plus minutes from your memory, this was pretty much peak Manchester City. I will start with Crystal Palace, though, because they did begin this game really, really well. Chris Richards scores the second goal of this match off of a set piece. Wouldn't it be nice if the U.S. had someone who could deliver a set piece, even like half as well as Adam Warden? Well, they probably do. It's just not Christian Pulisic. My mind hurts every time I think about this so much. Chris Richards, dangerous in the box. Nobody with the U.S. ever gets him good service. A good set-piece goal from Richards off of that corner kick. Even before that, the way that Palace are moving the ball, guys, in the first 10 minutes of this game was like silky smooth stuff. It was an incredible advertisement, not just for Crystal Palace, but for this sport. I enjoyed them passing the ball out from the back, playing not just through Man City's pressure early on in this game, but doing so well to draw them to one side and then play it around the other side, finding the back really of Man City's defensive shape and creating chances. And that's where Eze's goal comes from to kick this game off in the 8th minute. It is just textbook possession stuff. City were defending in a very narrow structure at times in this game. It looked a lot like, in stretches, a 4-3-3 or a 4-4-2 diamond, which is not new for this City team. We talked about this recently. But Palace did so well to draw them to one side, then quickly move it, through recycled possession along the back line or even like a diagonal switch over to the other side and find space and just go and punish Man City. And at that point, I'm thinking, wow, is this going to be yet another one of these disappointing defeats that Man City have suffered on a weekend where, they are not going to be in title contention, not that they have been, really. And then they turn it around, and Kevin De Bruyne starts pulling strings, and City, with their movement off the ball and their really sharp, incisive play in possession, they looked unstoppable for the last 60-plus minutes of this game. It was a very, very weird juxtaposition, but also fun to see Man City play good ball in a way that they haven't done quite as much this year.
Yeah, and fun to another quick beat on De Bruyne. I know we've touched on him already, but just fun to see him back to his best, because I think this season has been a bit sad for him. You could argue he's the greatest Premier League midfielder of all time, right? That's been a debate this season once he's announced that he's leaving Manchester City. I know Sky had that debate after the Manchester derby, where it was very telling they had nothing else to talk about after that game, so they talked about Kevin De Bruyne standing in that list. And this season, look, the legs have gone from him a little bit. Physically, he's clearly faded. He's not the same player. But to get a performance like this where you're reminded of just how good he can be, and also what City are going to have to replace. I think they're going to have to bring someone in. I know the idea was to maybe have Phil Foden become the Kevin De Bruyne of this team. His performances this season call that succession plan into question. So I think City are going to move for someone. They've been linked with Florian Wirtz, they've been linked with Morgan Gibbs-White, and when you see this performance, those are big shoes to fill. He was fantastic. He was getting on the turn really quickly, playing forward at speed, slotting through balls, because there was no Haaland as well. He's playing really high in the second half. By the way, the difference between the first and second half for City was incredible. They were so much more on the front foot in the second half. They were in the 4-2-4, pressing high. De Bruyne was part of that front four. And he was getting into the box, and I think for the Marmoush goal, I think it's him that finishes it off. De Bruyne is at the back post, he's heading it back across goal, and then he's setting up Kovacic inside the box as well. So it was just a full demonstration of everything that makes him so special.
Yeah, definitely so. What if De Bruyne does leave, and they ended up doing what they did with Ilkay Gundogan and replacing him with Ilkay Gundogan, and they have to get him back? Maybe they have to do that. If he keeps up at this pace, maybe he's in his prime.
They're only allowed to sign former Man City players, so who are they bringing back? Cole Palmer? Oh, that could work, actually. Maybe they should be on board with that one.
Yeah, we will see. All right, well, Man City with the 5-2 win. They are in 5th place in the Premier League. Pep Guardiola in this game sort of trying to rouse the crowd up after, I think it was the second goal. 4th place is on the line, guys. It's currently occupied by Newcastle, who got the 4-1 win over Manchester United this weekend. They are very much strengthening their Champions League claim for this season. And they did it without Eddie Howe on the sidelines. He was admitted to hospital on Friday. We wish him very well indeed. Sandro Tonali with a lovely opener on the volley here. Very nice goal that was indeed. Garnacho with a nice finish for the equaliser too, to be fair. But then Harvey Barnes, who's keeping Anthony Gordon out of this Newcastle team, scored a brace here. His second was a brilliant, pace and power situation as well. Very much enjoyed that. Graham, we had Andre Onana being replaced, quite publicly displaced from his place in goal after that European transgression, shall we say, from late last week. Altay Biundir in goal. Don't know if either of them have kept their place at this point. We'll have to see how the Man United goalkeeping situation pans out. But Ruben Amorim's side have won just 2 of their past 9 top-flight games. They're going to finish the campaign this season with their lowest points total in the Premier League era, and that is with, 6 games to go. And they're not mathematically safe from relegation. Just putting that out there, Graham, as well. Woof!
Yeah, they're a bad team. And I think they're clearly focusing on the Europa League at this point. You saw that with the team selection that they made. I think Onana, as bad as he has been recently, will come into that team again for the Lyon game. I think that was designed to maybe just take him out the spotlight a little bit. Harry Amas starts at left back as well. So it was a team selection that said Manchester United have basically thrown the towel in on this season, as their league position says as well. And this was a battering for Man United, who, as you say, Ryan, have now been confirmed as the worst Man United team of the Premier League era. Newcastle were better than them in every single area, particularly in the second half when they just blew them away. But even in the first half, their Garnacho goal was really nice. Very nice play by Diogo Dalot, and then a brilliant finish by Garnacho. It was a bolt out of the blue. It came against the run of play. There was nothing else other than a nice little exchange play between Xerxes and Bruno Fernandes in the first half. That was about it for Manchester United in this game. And I think the most stark thing was how Newcastle just ran over the top of Manchester United. That midfield three of Joe Linton, Tonali and Gomares, they're so physically imposing, and Man United just couldn't compete in that area of the pitch. And then in the attack, you've got Isak and Harvey Barnes, who had one of those performances that makes me wish he'd answer the phone to Steve Clarke one of these days. And for Barnes' second goal, he just runs straight through the middle of the Man United defence. So Newcastle have this in them where they just steamroll teams, and Manchester United were all too willing to let them do that.
I'm just imagining what a Steve Clarke phone call's like now. Is it like, you going to come play or what?
Yeah, it hasn't worked so far. So
we'll see. Joe, we live in the timeline where Nottingham Forest are 19 points ahead of Manchester United with 6 games to go. What a world.
I'm just happy to be here, guys. I'm just happy that my career coincided with this beautiful moment.
Likewise, what a time to be alive indeed. Man United, another fun stat for Man United fans. Apologies, Taylor, that we are piling on, but it is what it is. Man United have now lost more Premier League games since Sir Alex Ferguson retired than during his time in charge. They lost 114 under Sir Alex in 810 games. They've lost more than that now, 115 in 450 games. Half as many games.
Ryan, you'd never be able to tell what generation you grew up in. Very much trying to put the focus onto how good Newcastle were in this game, and Joe has made clear how bored of the Man United chat is. You're like, here's another stat to tell you how bad Man United are this season.
If you grew up when I grew up, you're never not tired of this storyline, frankly. But let's move on from there to Wolves 4, Tottenham 2. Spurs have lost 17 Premier League games out of 32 now. Wow. They are a point apart from the aforementioned Manchester United in the table. They've never lost more games than that in a Premier League season. Graham, if If Big Ange wins the Europa League, they've got the quarterfinal that they're in at the moment. Does he still get fired? Like, how does this team resolve at this point? Surely it's completely untenable, even if they do well in Europe.
I think it is. I think Big Ange is finished, even if they do win the Europa League. I'm at peace with that now, and the reason that I think that is this is my Gio Reyna moment, Joe.
Oh, nice. All right, yours is featuring a lot less yelling than mine. I feel like mine. Yeah.
I'm not angry. I'm just disappointed. I do think Big Ange is a good coach, but for whatever reason, they don't look like a Postecoglou team. So that framework isn't there anymore. The intensity that we saw in the first half of last season, where they did look like a Big Ange team, even if they're winning the Europa League, even when they get the odd good result, they're not achieving it in the Postecoglou way. So I don't know. I think this whole club just needs a reset. Their squad isn't particularly good. That's probably the main issue. But it does feel like a toxic situation that Big Ange won't survive. And look, you look at this performance against Wolves. They make so many mistakes as a team, Spurs. Like Romero just overrunning the ball as soon as pretty much 30 seconds after Spurs had got back into the game at 2-1, or Jed Spence scoring an own goal. Spurs get themselves back into the game at 3-2, and again, within 2 minutes, Bergval's given up the ball 20 yards from goal and Wolves score a fourth. I'm not sure how much of that can be put down to Postecoglou, but Spurs... They just can't get out. Spurs can't get out of this cycle, right? Not just under this manager, but previous managers too. It's a complete mess of a situation. So I do think this is probably the end for Big Ange. But even if they replace him in the summer, I don't have any hope that things are going to be drastically different next season.
Yeah, I think a lot of it for me, Graham, was the body language from the Spurs defence as well. When those goals kept going in, they weren't shouting at each other and trying to get rolled up. It was just shoulders dropped and this again.
That's what I mean by it just seems like a toxic situation, and the manager is almost always the person that pays for that. It kind of reminds me of Ten Hag towards the end of his time, where you're just not entirely sure what he's bringing to the table. But as we have seen with Erik Ten Hag, you put another manager in place and they have the same issues. So I think Spurs need a miracle worker at this point.
They do indeed. A few more games from the Premier League to go through before we break. Arsenal with a 1-1 draw against Brentford, and Mikel Arteta making 5 changes here. Ahead, Graham, of that inevitable 4-0 loss at the Bernabeu coming up in a few days.
I mean, you're joking, but you wouldn't rule it out. No, I think, and we'll come on to Real Madrid a little bit later, this Real Madrid team seem to have more problems than previous Real Madrid teams, so I would be a little bit surprised if that was to happen. And you could see this sort of result, switching back to this draw against Brentford, you could see this sort of result coming for Arsenal, not least because they've drawn a lot of matches recently. This makes it 4 draws in their last 6 league games. And Arteta was always going to rotate his team with that Real Madrid second leg in mind, given how important it is. So there was no Bukayo Saka, no Odegaard, MLS, the Pirate was on the bench, Jurrien Timber was also rotated out. It was a low-energy performance in general by Arsenal. My boy Kieran Tierney looked to have scored his first goal for Arsenal, or his first league goal for Arsenal since 2021, only for VAR to rule it out. So that's my VAR agenda more deeply entrenched now. But the Thomas Partey goal was a lightning-quick counter-attack that actually starts with David Raya. And there was a good piece on The Athletic by Liam Tharm looking at how, without Kai Havertz as the focal point of this attack, Arsenal are making much better use of quick transitions. It's one of the ways that they've dealt with that. So that was a design thing. But this was all about getting through this game without any injuries. Thomas Partey is a doubt for that Real Madrid second leg, which you can draw your own speculation from. I won't say any more on that, but otherwise Arsenal are in good shape to get the job done at the Bernabeu on Wednesday. I fancy them to get into the semi-finals.
Interesting. All right. Everton with a very good win at Nottingham Forest, 1-0. Abdoulaye Doucouré with a dramatic 94th minute winner, Graham.
Yeah, and if you only looked at the scoreline and the time of the winner, as you say, 94th minute, you might think that this was a smash and grab by Everton. It wasn't. They were the better team. Pretty much all the attacking numbers favoured them, and they certainly executed their game plan much better than Forest. And basically what Everton did was they did to Forest what Forest have done to so many other teams this season. They were well organised. They got men behind the ball. They were compact. They closed up space for Forest to play through. That's not the game that Forest want to play in. That's a game that they're going to struggle in. And when they had the opportunity to attack, Everton got players forward at speed. And their execution wasn't always great, but it came together for them right at the end. And the finish from Doucouré at the near post was excellent. I very much enjoyed his celebration of going to the fans with the contract. He's out of contract at the end of the season. He's made clear he wants a new contract, and so his celebration was writing his own contract and picking up the phone. So message sent to Everton. We'll see what happens with him in the summer.
Crucially, not legally binding, though. You have to do it on actual paper, typically.
Napkin works too, always.
Oh, napkin works. Messy napkin, famously.
That's true.
Yep, you're right. Good point, Joe. Couple more games. Chelsea 2, Ipswich 2. Ipswich had a 2-goal lead in this one, but obviously Chelsea fought back, and they are seemingly in a dead heat with Man City for that 5th Champions League spot at this point. And finally, Aston Villa with a 3-0 win at Southampton. Villa in that hunt, I suppose, as well for the Champions League. Marco Asensio missing 2 second-half penalties. It's quite a flex when you can miss 2 penalties and then still win 3-0. Yeah, sorry, Southampton.
Flex for everyone but Marco Asensio.
Yeah, not for Marco Asensio. Also, Aaron Ramsdale is saving 2 penalties in games, and Southampton are still on course to being the worst Premier League team in history. Yeah. So, Aaron, get out of there.
That's a rough one, indeed. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've got Bayern taking on Dortmund, we've got the Rome derby, and much more. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the weekend review. Let's turn our attention to the Bundesliga, where we had Bayern Munich drawing 2-2 with Borussia Dortmund in Der Klassiker. A bit of a roller coaster second half in this one with 4 goals. Max Bayer with the close range header opening it up. Guerrero equalising, and we got that first taste of that can music, which is never not surprising when it kicks in at Bayern Munich games. Then Serge Gnabry giving them the lead, and Anton with the equaliser after some Jurassic acrobatics. Interesting stuff indeed. Joe, what did we make of this game as a whole? Were you entertained?
Yeah, I was entertained, especially in the second half of this match. I was nerding out while watching this game because I was watching on the Bundesliga's tactical feed that ESPN Plus has. I don't know if they've got this in other places, but they've got a higher camera angle. It's not great at Bayern Stadium, but it's still better, and it is higher. And they're like, the commentators are nerding out just like me watching along at home. And I really enjoyed that. So I was watching these two teams play. And in the first half was a little bit of a cat and mouse affair, which I guess is always what us tactics nerds call 0-0 first halves. But there was some really interesting dynamic. There were some really interesting dynamics at play, especially early on in this game, where Dortmund start this match and they're trying to press very aggressively out of this 3-5-2 defensive shape. And Bayern are trying to press as well out of their more 4-2-3-1 look with Thomas Muller underneath Harry Kane. And eventually, Bayern just wrestle the entire control of the game away from Dortmund. After about 20 minutes, their average ball recovery time, Bayern Munich, was 5 seconds faster than Borussia Dortmund. They were getting on the ball more. They were pressing more aggressively. They'd won the early stages of the game. And they were finding some good chances, too, Bayern Munich. They were working the ball through Thomas Muller. Leroy Sané had a good bit of the play down the left side. Michael Elise was involved at times on the right wing. Bayern were getting the better looks, and Dortmund didn't have much in the first half. And Bayern weren't able to get on the score sheet, of course, in the first 45 minutes, but they come into the second half, and a similar pattern sort of starts to emerge. And then all of a sudden, Bayern Munich just gets slapped in the face by this Max Bayer goal that pretty much comes out of nowhere. Graham, I don't know if you had a different read on this game from Dortmund's perspective. They didn't show a lot, really, through the first 47 minutes of this game. Their goal is this lofted ball towards Bayer at the back post, and Kim just doesn't go up to deal with it. This is the Taylor Rockwell, I'm worried about Bayern Munich's center backs because they have a mistake in them every 90 minutes. This was it, Taylor. This was exactly what you're talking about. Kim goes up and sort of sees that the ball is coming in across to where he's positioned at the back post, and just he actually moves out of the way of Maxi Bayer. And the only explanation, and the one that I'm totally convinced by, is that he thinks Jonas Erbig, goalkeeper for Bayern Munich, is coming out to claim this ball. He does not come out to claim the ball, and everybody for Bayern Munich ends up looking very, very foolish, and it's 1-0 Dortmund. And at this point, Bayern have to claw their way back into the game. They do, and then they give up a set-piece goal. This was just a sloppy game, which makes for entertaining soccer, but it felt like Bayern had more than enough to get the job done here and just shot themselves in the foot one too many times.
Yeah, it became a faster game after that Maxi Bayer goal, because I totally agree, Joe. Bayern were in complete control, at least in terms of control of the ball in the first half, but I found myself a little bit frustrated at how they were doing a lot of horseshoe passing out to Elise. Elise would cut inside, he'd lay it back to someone 20 yards out and they'd have a shot. There were a lot of attacks or shots like that from Bayern, not a huge amount inside the the penalty box. So it needed something to break the game. I didn't see that Dortmund goal coming, but when it does, it opens up a little bit more space for Bayern. There's a bit more urgency to their play, a bit more speed to Dortmund's performance as well, because obviously Bayern are coming at them maybe a little bit more. They would take more risks in those moments. And there was an opportunity when Brandt gets released to the byline by Emre Can and then sets it back for Maxi Bayer, who's free inside the box. And I think it might be Simisic that makes the block, or Stanisic, excuse me, makes the block inside the box. So it became a game that was almost tailored towards Dortmund's strengths as a side, where they want to have that space to attack into. And in the first half, they weren't really able to activate Guirassy. They weren't able to get the two front players in Bayer and Guirassy kind of involved in any meaningful sense. So it became an entertaining game. But it was a match that exposed the weaknesses of both of these teams, where Bayern defensively still look more suspect than they would like to at this stage of the season, with a big second leg against Inter Milan coming up this week. We should mention that they are missing players, like Upamecano is out injured, Manuel Neuer. The reason that the goalkeeper UR Big is starting is because Manuel Neuer is out injured. Alphonso Davies is out injured as well. So they are making do with what they have. But nonetheless, it was a bit of a messy game that was an entertaining watch for the neutral.
Would it have been better with some Gio Reyna?
Always.
I mean, always. Is
Would
it
it?
always?
No, probably not. Probably not always.
Yeah, I think the vibe I got from this, although entertaining and a bit of a roller coaster as the game progressed, it just did seem like both teams were. It wasn't exactly thunderous and a bit tired on both parts. Is that fair?
I mean, I think it is fair, especially after both teams have that midweek Champions League game. It's also just a reflection of the fact that Dortmund, to zero in on them for a second, are not a good team. And I think I said this after the Champions League game the other day. We think of Borussia Dortmund as being like they're the next team off the title in Germany. Now that's a bit outdated. They're one of the top 4 or 5 teams in Germany. They're not. They're sitting in 8th right now, and they've not played very much good soccer in the 2024-25 season. They are not a super talented team. Their squad is unimpressive. They've had managerial choppings and changings, and this team doesn't have a lot of inspiration to how they play right now. They're not. And Graham's talking about how eventually the game sets up in a way that fits Dortmund a bit better because they can attack in transition. I think that's true. That's also just a really charitable way of saying that Dortmund aren't very good at using the ball, right? And it's not as if Bayern were doing a ton of textbook attacking stuff in this game either, although there were clearer ideas from this team where they'd have the fullbacks because, Alphonso Davies, as Graham said, they would have both Stanisic on the left and then he moves to center back later in the game. But Stanisic on the left and Leimer on the right, those two guys were almost never high and wide. They were almost exclusively playing through the half spaces so that the wingers could receive high and wide and go and drive inside. And I think that all came together quite well for Bayern as the game wore on. But Dortmund are not an impressive unit whatsoever, and Bayern are clearly flawed between the injury list and the fact that they probably had a few extra miles on their legs, not relative to Dortmund, but relative to the average team playing this weekend, and the fact that they're not really being pushed all that hard for the title race right now by Leverkusen. They are. It's not done, and it takes focus to actually finish the job. 6 points separate those two teams. But Leverkusen's not really impressing right now either. So this kind of gets to the general malaise that I think we're all sensing from some of the top European levels right now. But yeah, just a sort of strange game in that way, even if I was entertained.
Yeah, this is probably a better point for Bayern than Dortmund, especially with Leverkusen drawing at home to Union Berlin on Saturday. That's pretty much done. What is it, 6 points?
6 points. Yep.
4 or 5 games to
5.
go.
Yep. 5.
Yeah, 5 games. I'd be surprised if Leverkusen are able to overhaul that. For Dortmund, slightly strange one, because usually they'd be quite satisfied with a point away to Bayern, a team that they've had this mental block against, and also are just worse than in recent seasons, or even over the last decade since the Klopp days. But they're now 6 points off the top 4 with just 5 games left. That's a big difference to overturn. And there was a sense, obviously the way that this game panned out, I could never argue that Dortmund deserved to win or anything. But before the game, you could have argued that the Bayern were there for the taking, with the defensive injuries that they have, the way that Dortmund like to set up, the fact that I know Dortmund have that Champions League second leg as well. They're 4-0 down against Barcelona. I think that tie is pretty much done. Bayern are clearly much more focused on their second leg against Inter. So it was potentially there for Dortmund to go and win at the Allianz like they did last season. And it just says a lot about this Dortmund team that, as they frequently do, they weren't able to capitalise. And I think there's a debate. I know Manuel Vaeth and Stefan Bienkowski talk about this on their podcast, the Gegenpressing podcast, quite often. That Der Klassiker moniker is something that is like Dortmund and Bayern are rivals because they are, for a long time, have been the most successful teams in Germany, right? And if you go before the 90s, it was Gladbach and Bayern. So it's a little bit similar to how Man United and Arsenal were big rivals until all of a sudden they're not, when they're not successful. So what does this rivalry mean? What does their Klassiker mean if Dortmund are 6th in the table and aren't competing for the title? Is this the biggest rivalry in German football? So it's an interesting one, a little bit difficult to pin down what this game means at the moment.
Yeah, the marketeers are going to have to work on a new title for this game. Is that what you're saying, Graham?
What can you come up with? Bayern win.
Yeah,
nailed it.
The 6-pointer. That's what they could call it at this point. Although obviously not in this case. But as noted, Bayern are 6 points ahead at the top of the bully with 5 games to go. Dortmund down in 8th, just 3 points off that UEFA Conference League spot they maybe don't covet. Anyway, let's move on from there to Serie A, where we had the Rome derby, the Derby della Capitale on Sunday. Lazio 1, Roma 1. Peter Stark of the Shark, of the Discord. Is it Stark or Shark?
Shark. Yeah, do.
There we go, Peter. Thank you very much indeed. I got confused by your name, but not confused by your presence at the Rome derby. Hope you had a good time. He's put some images in our Discord for us to check out there if you want to do so. What do we have here? A bullet header from Romagnoli to open up the scoring for Lazio. Then Matala Sule with... Graham, I love a shot from outside the box that hits the bar and then hits the bar again. Joyful. Love it.
It was incredible. It was an incredible goal. That was pretty much Roma's... I was going to say it's their only chance. It's not a chance, is it? He sticks it in from 25 yards out. Otherwise, it was a pretty toothless performance by Roma. They were never really able to activate Jobbik as the centre forward. I think it's quite clear that they missed the dynamism and creativity of Paulo Dybala, who is still out through injury. I thought Pellegrini didn't really step up as the 10 and behind the central striker and as the most advanced midfielder. So a little bit disappointing from Roma, and it feels like they're finally starting to run out of steam after that incredible run under Claudio Ranieri, where it really looked feasible that they might finish in the top 4. And this weekend was pretty damaging, not just for Roma, but for both teams. And this match was pretty much the match I expected, in that there wasn't a lot between the two teams, just as there isn't a lot between them in the table, right? There's 2 points between Lazio and Roma. Atalanta and Juve both win this weekend, so both Lazio and Roma have lost ground in the pursuit of the top 4 of Champions League qualification. I thought Lazio probably edged it as the better team. They certainly found it easier to create opportunities, which is that was something that, as I say, Roma struggled to do throughout the match. Had it not been for Svilar, Lazio might have won it. And by the way, Svilar, he's been on my radar for the last few months, certainly since Ranieri came in. He is a quality goalkeeper, and I highlight him because it wouldn't surprise me if some big clubs are monitoring him. Maybe not in the summer, but in the years to come, I think he might be one that we see in the Premier League or one of the big clubs elsewhere in Europe. He made a save from Romagnoli. Romagnoli, of course, puts Lazio ahead in this game. But before that, there was a huge save from Romagnoli from close range for Svilar. There was another big save from Isaacson at the near post. He just makes saves, which for a modern goalkeeper seems like a novelty when you have to watch Robert Sanchez and Andre Onana and Bayern Dier every single week. But yeah, he looks quality.
Can we give our flowers, Graham, to Claudio Ranieri? Roma are 16 games undefeated at the moment. They've climbed up the table since he's joined. Lest we remind ourselves, this is his 3rd time as Rome coach. He is Rome born and bred. He came out of retirement. He was at Cagliari last season and then has come on for one last gig. And he's done incredibly well in the circumstances.
Yeah. Totally, and he's never. This very much looks like being his last Rome derby. Although who knows, given the fact that he keeps coming back. But he's never lost a Rome derby, which is incredible, given this is his 3rd spell. So there are certain managers who just are able to tap into, I don't know what it is, the identity, the spirit of a club, some kind of intangible thing. I think of David Moyes at Everton has been able to do that since he's gone back into that club. I think Ranieri's done something similar. The only regret is that he wasn't in charge from the start of the season, because if he'd been in charge for the full season, I think it's reasonable to expect that Roma would be firmly in top 4 contention, but they messed around with De Rossi and then even Juric, remember that spell? The Southampton manager who's since been hired by another team and then sacked by that team. What seasons he has had. It's been a messy season for Roma, but I do think they are running out of steam just towards the end of the campaign, unfortunately.
Yeah. This game did feel like a run out of steamy kind of game, not to be too negative on proceedings at all. But there you go, the point split in Rome. As you mentioned, Graham, Inter, they got a win here, 3-1 over Cagliari, the aforementioned. They are 6 points clear of second place Napoli, who I believe take on Empoli again today. They had a Monday game last week, Napoli, if I remember correctly, as well. 6 rounds to go in Serie A. Still reasonably tight at the top. Things could happen there. Just to note that Juventus had a 2-1 win over Lecce this weekend as well. Igor Tudor remains unbeaten as coach at Juventus, but the headline that may interest us coming out of Juventus camp is Weston McKennie among 13 players involved in illegal online gaming, a probe thereof for using illegal platforms for online poker and betting on other sports. To clarify here, they don't risk a ban due to this activity, but instead a maximum fine of, wait for your gasp, Joe, €250 from Italian authorities for this one. Yeah.
Oh, no. Gasp. I mean, Weston McKennie's just going to get back in there and put it all on the over. Like, I'm just waiting. Do it, Wes.
Yeah.
That's his ranch budget for the month. What's he going to do?
He's going to need some more royal flushes to come up on those online poker sites to recover from that one. But interesting to see how that one pans out. And as Graham mentioned, Atalanta 2, Bologna 0. Big win for Atalanta. Ended their streak of 3 straight losses. They're in third. Tough one for Bologna, who stay in fifth. They are 2 points behind Juventus. We're going to take one more quick break. When we come back, we'll go to La Liga. We'll go to MLS. Then we'll get out of here. Join us then. Total Soccer Show, welcome back to the Weekend Review. We go now to Spain. Where should we start, Graham? Let's start with Real Madrid's 1-0 win at Alaves. Kylian Mbappe with a red card here for a pretty unnecessary foul, I would say. There was an amusing line I saw in Mundo Deportivo saying that it's expected Mbappe will be suspended for only 2 matches, as the referee's report said he was fighting for the ball. Did he mean the soccer ball? Because it was nowhere near it.
What ball was he talking about?
Yeah,
because he was
the ball right on the leg. Really, the ball right on the leg. That joint of Antonio Blanco's leg.
Yeah.
It was a rotated team from Ancelotti in this game. Bellingham and Vinicius got a rest, and Kylian Mbappe got a nice rest as well after nearly breaking Blanco's leg. Yeah, it was an absolutely shocking tackle. That I hadn't read that, Ryan, about the referee's report saying he was fighting for the ball. Maybe that does mean he's going to get a two match ban. Last night when I was reading about it, I think most people were accepting that he would get a 3-match ban and possibly even a 4-match ban if the RFEF added an extra match, which they can do for particularly violent sending-offs, which I would say fits the criteria. If he's banned for 4 matches, he misses the Copa del Rey final against Barcelona. So there'd be a real consequence for that. Apparently Mbappe apologised to Blanco after the match, went into the opposition changing room to apologise to him. David Ancelotti, who is Carlo's son and assistant manager, said that he also apologised to the rest of the Real Madrid team. It was a shocker, possibly the worst tackle I've seen all season, so he deserves to sit out a few matches for that.
I'm wondering, if Kylian Mbappe thought that since Carlo wasn't on the sidelines, maybe he could get away with it. Like Dad's not watching, maybe you can put in a tackle. Ancelotti was suspended for this game. He was up behind a glass wall, defensive coordinator NFL
puffing
style.
On his vape. Yeah. Everyone is losing their minds on the pitch, and it cuts to Ancelotti, and he's just puffing on a vape.
Which it just doesn't get any more on brand than that, does it? Like, unless he was sort of trimming his eyebrows, I don't think there's a way to make that more on brand.
If that was his logic, Joe, that he's not on the sidelines, he won't see it. He was in a box where he would have almost certainly had a TV where he would have seen it much quicker in replay.
Logic. I'm not here for your logic, Ryan. This is a huge moment, and I have a question for Graham. But before we get there, I want to underscore this: Real Madrid are clawing to win the title in Spain. Like, just to be very clear, we're talking about how England is done, France is done, Germany feels pretty done, Italy. I noticed I didn't get any credit for my Inter will win the title take in that last segment that we did, but I wanted to raise that.
It's not settled yet. It's
not settled yet, and it's not settled in Germany yet either. But this is a tight title race. There's a 4-point gap between Real Madrid and between Barcelona, and there's a game between these two teams left to be played. Like, this is still very much on the table. And Kylian Mbappe goes out there and puts his cleats through a dude. Sorry, Graham, I know you don't like cleats. Puts his boot through a dude and gets suspended. It doesn't matter to me if it's a 2-game, 3-game, 4-game suspension, whatever it is. I would expect it's Real Madrid. It's going to be a 2-game suspension. That matters a lot. And Real Madrid should still win. These games coming up on their schedule against Athletic Club, and they have Getafe. Those are games that they should win, regardless of whether Kylian Mbappe is on the field or not. But when Kylian Mbappe is not on the field, Real Madrid are a worse team. Which I know there was some debate about that before Mbappe signed, but I think we have a good amount of data that says that is the case now.
Well, they're also worse because Vinicius is in terrible form, right?
So this just to me is this is the biggest moment of the weekend, and I don't think it's particularly close. I think this is a bigger moment than anything that happened in England. I think this is a bigger moment than anything that happened in Klassiker. This is something that actually could have a tangible impact on the title race, and the race that is, I think, the by far most compelling one still left in a major European league. And it is Real Madrid's biggest superstar. I still cannot believe that this happened.
Crazy times.
Sorry. Can I ask my question to Graham? I just remembered it. Graham, you said that if he was to be suspended for or however many games, he would miss the Copa del Rey match against Barcelona. Is that the suspension in the league goes across to cup competitions as well?
Yes,
in Spain?
That's
Interesting.
correct. Yep.
Okay,
yeah,
that was my
because
question.
they're both operated by the RFEF, right?
Right.
So, or the suspensions are both applied by the RAF to both
the RAF,
competitions.
the Royal Air Force.
Boom. Yeah, got it.
Good stuff. Well, Real Madrid with the 1-0 win on the road, as Barcelona also achieved the same feat at Leganes. Their unbeaten streak is at 13 matches now, Joe. And as you mentioned, just 4 points separating Barcelona and Real Madrid at the top. And also, as you mentioned, they have a Classico coming up on May 11th as well. 7 games remaining. It is toit.
I am stoked for that game. Like, that is the game I have circled across all of Europe for the game that I'm most excited for between now and the end of the season. This was not a textbook Barcelona game by any stretch of the imagination. It also didn't really need to be coming off of the Champions League. They lose Balde 41 minutes into this game at left back. That is a little bit of a concern, certainly something to watch. But Barcelona did enough in this game, but again, not a perfect match. So they are showing early on in this match some weak points in the high line that Leganes do well to take advantage of. Inigo Martinez gets beaten for speed in that high line, defending as that right-sided center back in this moment, and he gets absolutely beat to the end line, and that's a problem for Barcelona. There were a couple of those moments where they get caught out with that high line, which is not a surprise, and is something that Hansi Flick can live with when they're creating chances early and often at the other end, and they were not in this game. The real breakthrough moment comes, yes, granted, via an own goal, but it really does come through Rafinha, who continues to be excellent. He's on the left wing in this game. He plays that teasing ball into the box that forces the own goal. But there wasn't a lot. There weren't many fireworks in this game from Barcelona. In a weird sense, I kind of find it comforting, as someone who is a bit of a Barcelona sympathizer. Find it a little comforting that they can grind out wins. When you look at how they play and you look at the personnel on this team, it's not a very, hey lads, let's grind it out bunch. When you look at this squad, so that they were under pressure all the way until the end of this game, having to do some desperation defending in the closing minutes. It's not a sign of a good team. That's not the kind of thing you want to see, because you want to be in such control of a game that it doesn't matter by the time you're that deep in a game. But, you know, soccer is you're never going to be playing perfect games every single weekend, and for Barcelona to gut this one out, I think, was impressive.
Yeah, the real Barcelona highlight of this match was a Fermin Lopez dribble inside the box, where he beats about 4 Alaves players in a 10-yard area, and then somehow shoots wide after doing all the hard work. He's beaten 4 players inside the box. The easy thing is the finish. He somehow puts it past the post. That would have been one of the goals of the season, but I agree with Joe. This match was a bit of a grind for Barcelona. I also weirdly take some comfort from it that they can play this way and still get a result, even though they were a little bit fortunate in moments. Alaves did have, or it's not Alaves, excuse me, that's who Real Madrid were playing. Leganes did have a disallowed goal from a Garcia header. There was a couple other moments for Garcia as well. Rabah, had he been a little bit more composed inside the box, then Leganes would have scored as well. There's an opening for Munir, of course, against his former team late on, when Martinez is able to get back and make the tackle. So it was a bit of a ragged performance by Barcelona, but they get the job done.
They did indeed. Last but not least, on the weekend review, we go to Major League Soccer, where Joseph Lowry, Vancouver are still killing it, top in the West, after a 5-1 win over Austin.
Yeah, this game from Vancouver was the latest reminder that this team is so ridiculously good. Brian White scores 4 goals, the first player in Vancouver Whitecaps history to score 4 goals in an MLS game. He was amazing. Vancouver just absolutely kicked Austin to the curb in this match. And this was after Brad Stuver, Austin FC's goalkeeper, had done everybody a service at BC Place and scooped up a mouse that had gotten on the field at BC Place, scoops it, corrals it with one hand, scoops it with the other, goalkeeper gloves coming in handy. Great play from Brad Stuver. the rest was one-way traffic for Vancouver, who were suddenly an absurdly deep team under Jesper Sorensen. They didn't do a ton in the transfer market other than lose their, second best player in Stuart Armstrong, who went back to the championship. And somehow they're getting ridiculously quality contributions from players like Ralph Priso, who washed up in Colorado and Toronto. They're getting Pedro Vite in him taking the next step in his career. They're getting something more from basically everybody in this squad, and Brian White is just one of the examples at the top end. Again, those 4 goals for him. Still no Ryan Gauld for this Vancouver team, and yet they are through to the semifinals of the CONCACAF Champions Cup, where they will play Inter Miami, and they are just decimating their actual Western Conference competition. Yeah, Jesper Sorensen's making me think awfully hard about my Wilfried Nancy is the guaranteed coach of the year every year take, which I still kind of believe, but man, Sorensen has done a really, really good job with this group.
Yes, indeed. Joe, I'm still fascinated by LA Galaxy being winless. Are they still not good?
Yep, still not good. They cannot get through a game without making a really high-profile mistake. They're slowly getting healthier, which is a really good sign. And a point for them is not nothing, because they have needed results. This is only their 3rd result of the year. All draws. 0 wins, 3 draws, 5 losses so far. They get Sanabria for 45 minutes in this game. But it's a red card from Zonka in the first half. 34-year-old Zonka, who is signed to be a solid depth option for this team that's having to play because Maya Yoshida is injured. And this is the 34-year-old Zonka who basically gave RSL a goal last weekend and now tilted the scale all the way in the Dynamo's favor after they'd already gone down 1-0 against Houston at home at Dignity Health. Yeah, the Galaxy are not good whatsoever.
Yeah, indeed. Over in the East, with Columbus atop with that 2-1 win at St. Louis, cruelly taking top spot from Charlotte FC, who also got the win at Montreal on Saturday, Joe.
Yes, yeah. Shout out to Charlotte FC, who did not play a good game whatsoever, but Pep Biel looks real good, and maybe like he is one of the best non-DP attackers in the league. He was signed as a DP last year, then brought back on a non-DP deal this year, which does give Charlotte, if they can finagle some things, the roster flexibility to do something in the summer. Biel is legit. Charlotte, without Wilf Zaha, not that he's been great, were not amazing, but they did spoil Montreal's first home game of the season, so there's that. And you mentioned Columbus. They got the first minutes of Daniel Gazdag. He came on and played the second half in their 2-1 win at St. Louis. I think we're going to talk about that Daniel Gazdag trade more tomorrow. Do Taylor and Jeff know that? No, they don't, but we're gonna make that happen. And then the other result that I wanted to mention from the Eastern Conference is the New England Revolution going on the road against Atlanta United and winning 1-0 at the Benz. Caleb Porter keeping his job for another week, which is great for him. I think he pulled out a really sharp tactical tweak in this game, moving to a back 3 for New England. And basically they were in this 3-4-1-2 shape, which is good because New England don't have any wingers who can change games, as it turns out. And so getting more players stacked centrally and letting Peyton Miller and Feingold do a bit more as wingbacks, I think made a lot of sense. So credit to Caleb Porter, which is not something I've said a lot since he's been in New England, but I think he made a really sharp change in this game. And New England were worthy-ish winners. It's a penalty goal that changes things for them, but Atlanta didn't look good. And that, I guess that's where I'm coming at on the Rev side. It's not like New England were amazing on the road, but Atlanta United, Ronnie Dylas still doesn't have answers to how he wants to use Alexei Marenchuk and how he wants to use Miguel Almiron. Those guys have played in several different roles and in several different parts of the field so far in 2025. Atlanta, despite outspending everybody in the winter transfer window up to this point, and nobody's gonna brush past that, they're averaging just barely over a point per game. 9 points through 8 games. They've got questions to answer.
They do indeed. Maybe we'll approach some of those questions on the feed on Tuesday, as Joe mentioned. MLS Spesh coming to the feed as usual on Tuesday. But for now, that is the weekend review. Graham Rutland, thank you very much indeed for reviewing the weekend. I hope you stick around. Maybe we could do a weekend review extra on the Patreon feed, patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. What do you think?
Quite the idea you have there, Ryan Bailey. Thank you. Let's do that.
Let's do that indeed. Joe Larry, will you join us on that?
You know, I think I will. It sounds like fun. Let's do it.
All right, listener, will you join us on that? Let us know. Patreon.com/Total Soccer Show. But in the meantime, on this feed, that's all for now. We love you. Bye!